Oh.
Okay, so welcome to anybody that is viewing this film in the here and now. We are jumping in as part of a Culture Northumberland network meeting, which take place quite regularly. We're looking at quarterly for those. So if you'd like any more information on those, just head to our Facebook page or drop me an email. Today I've asked Rebecca to talk about her current project and her work that she's been doing, and so she's really kindly said that she'll share where she's up to, some of that process, and what she would like from you guys. So I'll hand over to Rebecca and she can tell us a little bit more.
Hello. I'm Rebecca, and the company's name is Miscreations Theatre, and we're based in Allendale. So we're pretty rural, and we're fairly newly established. So we've been an officially incorporated company for a year now, exactly. But we've produced work in the past, sort of back in 2012 through to 2014. Myself and my partner produced a couple of shows, which we called clown theatre productions, and they did regional tours around the Northeast. There was a performance called Love and Red Tape, which was all about encroaching bureaucracy into our lives. Lots of nonsense, and a huge, great big red worm appeared several times in that. And then we had another show that went up to Edinburgh and down to London to take part in some clown festivals and the mime festival that was called Entrenched, and it was all around some archives we found of a local character who had served in the Northumberland Fusiliers and kept an incredible journal of sketches. He'd been quite a talented artist, and we worked with this archive to produce a one-man show around the absurdities that took place in the trenches in the First World War, and that was very well received at the time. We then went on a huge hiatus as Aaron went and worked for companies across the globe, and I had several children, 2 children. Several sounds like a lot, 2. But then as we came into lockdown, Aaron's work obviously was completely decimated. Big companies he'd been performing with closed their doors. He found himself back here in Allendale, and the pair of us were just wondering, well, how do you move forward, like everybody else at that point in time? It was at that moment that I picked up a book called Wilding by Isabella Tree. And I read that book and was absolutely gripped from start to finish. And there was all kinds of doors opening in my mind about how this subject of wilding could be something that would suggest some kind of theatrical exploration of the subject, really. And it just seemed so pertinent and relevant. And I remember so well that first lockdown, as I'm sure everybody does, felt like such a special time in so many ways, because it was such an unknown quantity, and it was a very lovely time of year as well. And there was a very, very tangible pause in people's lives, and it felt like there was this really delicate bubble of possibility sort of just hanging in the air. People were asking questions about the way we live and what we were doing to the planet, and big questions that people were just they were looking at and thinking about, and so my idea started to grow that there could be a theatre project that would enable this investigation and these facilitate some kind of creative platform for these questions that people were having about our relationship with the natural world and the environment around us. And then it felt like we came out of that lockdown, and there was just this sudden rush and urgency and push and pressure to get back into life as it was, and to re-establish, you know, it was all about the economy and growth and making sure we were getting back on track. And it felt like that pressure just, it kind of popped that bubble, you know, like it felt like that there was a little moment there that potentially was gonna disappear, that those questions were no longer at the forefront of everybody's minds. And you know, because we had to get back to work and get back to life in the best way that we could. And I saw my children going back into school when they were able to. So I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I could see them carrying around some pretty big questions with them. It felt like, you know, because they heard constantly people talking about COVID and coronavirus and what it meant for them, their bubbles, their isolation, not being able to see, extend the rest of their families, and masks and all the rest of it. So I could see that there was things on their minds that were not necessarily, they shouldn't have been there for kids of that age, really. And on top of that, their school is really, they're very proactive in terms of encouraging, which I think lots of schools are now, in terms of encouraging healthy habits in as far as recycling, walking to school, thinking about the environment, what we can do to live a more sustainable life. And so they were coming back home feeling unsettled anyway because of COVID, but also having lots of questions about, well, why do we do this? Why do we drive cars? Why is there still plastic in the world? Would the world be a better place if there were no people and no plastic, mummy? And questions like that from very young children, you start to think, right, well, there needs to be a balance. Yes, everybody needs to be made aware of the responsibility that we have for taking care, but also very young children, it's not their responsibility, it's our responsibility, and they need to understand that it's a collective responsibility, not an individual child's responsibility, and that they needed the positive message to go alongside this idea of responsibility. So where's that positive message about simply being able to be blown away by the wonder of the natural world rather than worrying about the natural world, you know? So then I thought, right, that's where I'm going to go with this project. So the Wildling Theatre project was conceived of as a possibility for offering creative engagement with the natural world in a very positive way, and yes, about educating around the importance of biodiversity and looking at endangered species, local species of plants and wildlife and insects, but in a very light-hearted and as positive a way as possible. So we engaged with people on our doorstep because that's what was necessary. Please cut me off if I'm rambling too much. But we're having realized that what we needed to do was be very local, because we were being asked not to travel too much, that we had to operate within bubbles that we had access to. So we had what was termed COVID safe access to my kids' classes at their primary school. And on our doorstep, we've got an amazing community organization called Gardening for Mental Health, which happens at Higher Ground in Allendale. And they have this wonderful community garden, and they do lots of work with volunteers and people who want access to some activities that are going to just help the way they feel, basically, engage with promoting well-being and all the rest of it. So they were really interested in something happening on their ground. And I had this idea about creating a sculpture that the kids could get involved in, see something grow up within the vicinity of their community. And between us, there was a team of us in the end. That was myself and my partner Aaron and John Cobb, and a sculptor called Andy Bates. And we came up with this dreaming giant sculpture. So what we built in the grounds at Higher Ground was the head, just the top half of a head of a giant, and it looks like he's poking his head up out of the ground, the idea being that the rest of him is asleep underground. And the premise for the whole performance is that there are these earth giants waking up all over the land. Something is out of balance, they're disturbed, and we need to find a way to encourage them to go back to sleep and slumber peacefully in harmony with the land once again. And this sculpture is a living earth sculpture, so it's made from entirely organic material. And the idea is that it will degrade over time and become wilded in and of itself. And in the top of his head's kind of scooped out like a sort of like you scoop out a hard-boiled egg, and you can plant into the top of it. So what we did is we invited the kids from the primary school to come and see a performance around the giant's head, that at the end of which they then came and met the giant, and we all together planted wildflowers, local wildflowers that had been donated by the nursery, into the top of his head to enrich his dreams and send him back to sleep. And since then, we've had several trips from the school up to the giant's head, and they absolutely love him. He's definitely part of the community. They've named him. That we've been up there, we've done willow weaving with them. We've written little dream messages that we've left on his head to keep feeding his dreams. And lots of them pass him regularly on their way backwards and forwards to school. And we've also got a time-lapse camera trained on him, so that over the course of a year, we're capturing seasonal footage, just that shows the growth. And at the minute, it's actually the decay. So we've gone from a beautiful spring to summer where it became really voluptuous and lots of greenery and all the rest of it. And now he's looking very autumnal and into winter. So that was the R&D that we got funded back in April and May. We got funding from the Arts Council and Northumberland County Council and our local parish council, and loads of support working with local community groups, which has been really good, establishing those contacts, because it looks like they're going to be an ongoing relationship that we can build on now, which is excellent. And we've got a really good working relationship with Allendale Primary School now as well. And they're really keen to see more projects and this kind of work continuing, which is fantastic. And the knock-on effect of that is we actually had loads of positive response to the project. So we've got a Facebook page, we've got a really basic website, but we're slowly starting to build that up, and we're looking for funding to improve it. And we've been putting the footage up there. We've shared some of the time lapse already. And now we're in a position where we've potentially got more interest in the project than I can have the capacity to deliver, because I am just myself. I read a book and I'm on my laptop and I'm trying to do everything, and I'm not getting paid at the minute. So, you know, it's one of those situations where I'm having a great time because I love the project. But I think you were talking about challenges, to pick on that a little bit. I find, because of the rural where we are extremely rural, and my intention is to take this project to other similar rural locations, but the amount of traveling, networking and time that you have to put in order to build up those relationships. So I now have a pretty good relationship with the TCR Hub over in Barnard Castle and the Westmoreland Dales Landscape Partnership, and also RTC Sports up in Otterburn. I've got a good conversation going on with them. But it's investing your time, and it's just the business of getting in the car and driving to go and meet people, because you can only do so much on Zoom, and it takes a lot. Like if you're in the middle of a big sprawling city, then you can get on a bus and you go and knock on someone's door or whatever it is. It feels like the sprawl, our geographic sprawl, is one of the challenges. It's also one of the absolute wonderful things about where we live, and it's fantastic. But I question whether there's anything that can support the amount of work that goes into that networking that needs to be done before you're even in a position of being able to go to the Arts Council. It's a big investment on the part of the artist who has to.
I would absolutely agree. So I'm equally as rural as you. So I live in Gilsland, which is even far west of you.
Yeah.
And to get you over to Sea Houses is going to take me 2 hours, basically.
Yeah.
So which is where Mike lives.
Well, I'll just stop recording there, just to sort of finish that bit off, and then we can carry on the conversation. But I'll put all of Rebecca's links underneath, and we'll keep in touch about our project. But if you're watching this and you've got ideas, partnerships, networks, people that she should know, then feel free to drop her an email. But thanks for watching, and I'll just stop recording now.